They will say this video is dangerous, and they will be correct. What you are about to hear can shatter years of carefully constructed illusions. The heartbreaks that left you hollow, the betrayals that forced you to question your worth, the moments when you condemned yourself for what was never truly your fault. Arthur Schopenhauer did not simply speculate about the catastrophe of modern love. 2 centuries ago, he charted the very path of your suffering before you even entered this world. This is not abstract philosophy. It is survival knowledge, concealed beneath the mask of romance and revealed only to those willing to look without flinching. Imagine a man in his 20s, call him Noah, pursuing the dream planted into him since childhood. He is told that life's highest meaning lies in finding the one, building a home, and securing happiness in a lifelong bond. He invests everything, his time, his money, his trust, into relationships that demand his vulnerability but repay him with disillusionment. By his mid-30s, he is divorced, financially wrecked, and emotionally drained to the point of numbness. How many men do you know who mirror this story? Perhaps more than you are comfortable admitting. Noah is not an exception. He is the template of a system, one that Schopenhauer unmasked with surgical clarity. In the metaphysics of love, Schopenhauer dismantles the fairy tale of romance by revealing it as nature's most elaborate trick. What we label as passion, desire, and devotion is in truth a biological mirage. The thrill of infatuation, the poetry of longing, the intoxication of attachment. These are nothing more than the brain's method of ensuring reproduction before reality sobers the dream. He wrote that nature is indifferent to individual happiness. It only cares for the survival of the species. Love, in his analysis, is not salvation but bait. The trap is that what feels like transcendence is in fact servitude to biology. But what if the illusion did not remain confined to nature's silent machinery? What if society itself seized this trick and forged it into an instrument of power? Schopenhauer warned, in words many dismissed as bitterness, that the dynamic between the sexes would shift as social structures changed. He observed that as women gained influence, a radical thought in the 19th century, the narrative of love would mutate from duty shared between 2 individuals into a transaction that rewarded one and exploited the other. Women, he wrote, are directly adapted to act as the nurses and teachers of our childhood precisely because they themselves are childish, frivolous, and short-sighted. Before dismissing this as nothing more than outdated contempt, examine the history. In mid-19th century Europe, a man who divorced could lose not only his property, but his children and his reputation overnight. While the woman walked away unpunished, the philosopher named it for what it was: the legalized theft of male labor. Fast forward nearly 200 years, and the echo is unmistakable. Today, nearly 4 out of 5 divorces are initiated by women. In most cases, the man surrenders not only half his wealth but also his role as father. It is not equality, but a symmetry cloaked as fairness. To see how this played out historically, recall the story of Friedrich, a German merchant in the 1800s. He wed a woman of respected lineage, only to discover she was siphoning his money to finance her lover's ventures. When he sought divorce, the courts sided with her, rationalizing that her fragility excused her deception. Friedrich ended his days in poverty, abandoned by law and society alike, replaced 19th century Germany with modern family courtrooms, and the script remains unchanged. Only the names and fashions have altered. You were told since childhood that love is redemption, that opening yourself is a sign of strength, that self-sacrifice ennobles a man. Schopenhauer would have laughed at such naivete. He observed, "A man's happiness lies in doing what he wills. A woman's happiness lies in willing what he does." The translation is ruthless. The structure is not broken. It is perfectly designed to drain men and distribute the gain elsewhere. And what waits beneath this truth grows darker still, because it is no longer only nature or society shaping this prison. It is the entire psychological machinery of the modern world, engineered to keep men complicit in their own undoing. Consider what this means when you follow the thread deeper. Schopenhauer's warnings were not idle musings from a bitter man. They were observations sharpened by the weight of history, and history has confirmed them again and again. In the 19th century, marriage was not a romantic union, but an institution in which men labored while women were legally shielded. A divorced man could lose his fortune, his children, and his honor in the span of a single judgment. Schopenhauer named this injustice clearly: legalized robbery, dressed in the language of family. And while time has moved forward, the shape of the system has remained the same. In the United States today, 80% of divorces are initiated by women. Studies show that men who go through divorce lose on average half their assets and custody in the overwhelming majority of cases. Where once the courts excused deceit on the grounds of fragile nature, now they justify financial transfer in the name of fairness. Different words, identical outcome. Think of Robert, a surgeon in Florida who built his life from sleepless nights in operating rooms, providing not only for himself but for the family he thought he was protecting. At midlife, his wife declared she was simply no longer happy. The court awarded her the house, half of his retirement, and thousands in alimony every month. At an age when he should have been contemplating legacy, Robert was forced to live in a one-room apartment, still laboring into his 60s because he could not afford rest. The story echoes Friedrich's in 19th century Germany. Time, technology, and culture may change, but the structure repeats itself relentlessly. Schopenhauer once wrote that marriage is a trap set for men by nature and perfected by society. It is both cage and theater. Biology provides the bait. Society locks the door. But what is most chilling is how the cage is reinforced by the very culture that pretends to liberate. Modern psychology, once designed to heal, has become another lever in the system. The term emotional labor emerged from feminist critiques of unpaid domestic work. But today, it functions as a weapon that guilts men into confessing more, exposing more until their vulnerability becomes ammunition against them. The message men receive is paradoxical. Open yourself to be accepted, yet understand that exposure will strip you of respect. Take Oliver, a young engineer, persuaded by his partner to reveal his deepest scars. He believed the request was born of love. He spoke of his childhood, his nights of isolation, the loneliness that once defined him. For 2 weeks, she reassured him, then abruptly ended the relationship. Her words were sharp. "I just don't see you as strong anymore." Research supports this cruel logic. A 2019 study in social, psychological, and personality science found that men who show sadness or fear are rated by women as less attractive, less capable, and less worthy as long-term partners. Schopenhauer framed it centuries earlier. Weakness in men is despised, even when demanded. The modern name for this is the weakness penalty, but the philosopher already described it as the natural order. And the system does not stop with the personal. It spreads into the machinery of law and culture itself. The introduction of no-fault divorce in the 1970s was advertised as equality. In truth, it gave one party overwhelming leverage. Data show that when wives earn more than husbands, divorce rates rise sharply, as though success itself destabilized the union. Men are discarded precisely when they should be rewarded. This is not accident. It is design. Courts do not simply arbitrate disputes. They redistribute wealth and time from fathers to mothers. From men to the system, the family, once a sanctuary, becomes the site of extraction. Meanwhile, technology amplifies the script. Dating platforms are not about connection, but about commerce. A market where beauty is auctioned and men bid with money, attention, and self-respect. The philosopher wrote, "The more choices a woman has, the less capable she is of love." On screens glowing in every pocket, this prophecy manifests. Women inundated with endless suitors cannot bond. Men desperate for affection become expendable. A young man like Jake may invest weeks of hope, 3 dates, and careful effort, only to be dismissed in silence. Weeks later, she posts images from Bali with another man, validated not by affection but by luxury. The cycle repeats endlessly. The system thrives on disposability. And every failed attachment feeds its strength. And yet, even here, we have not reached the bottom. For beneath the courtrooms, beneath the therapy culture, beneath the endless feed of curated desire, lies something more sinister. The greatest chains are not forged by others, but accepted by ourselves. What happens when men begin to believe their own oppression is justice, that their suffering is deserved, that the system is natural, inevitable, and even moral. Schopenhauer named this the will turned against itself, and it is here that the darkest consequences emerge, where survival is no longer guaranteed. You wake up in a world that tells you masculinity is a disease, that your instincts are dangerous, and that your value is measured not by who you are, but by what you can produce. This narrative is not coincidence. It is the perfected continuation of what Schopenhauer foresaw. The culture of today whispers in a man's ear, "Your desires are predatory, your ambitions oppressive, your suffering irrelevant." And yet, the most devastating blow is not what society does to you, but what it convinces you to do to yourself. When a man embraces the belief that his oppression is justice, he becomes his own jailer. Schopenhauer called this the will turned against itself, and its fruits are tragic. We see this in the epidemic of male suicide. Every 30 seconds, somewhere in the world, a man takes his own life. In the West, 3 out of 4 suicides are men, with divorced men 8 times more likely to die by their own hand than their married peers. These are not isolated tragedies. They are ritual sacrifices to a system that exploits and discards. Consider Marcus, a 32-year-old engineer. After his wife left with their daughter, the court limited his visitation to twice a month unless he increased child support. His final note read, "I'm sorry I wasn't enough. Not smart enough for my father. Not strong enough for my wife. Not rich enough for society." Hours later, he leapt from the 14th floor of his office. The last search on his phone: how to disappear without debt collectors finding you. His story is repeated silently in countless variations. Yet culture dismisses it as anomaly. It is not anomaly, it is design. The deception that sustains this system rests on 3 colossal lies. The first lie: love will redeem you. From childhood fairy tales to Hollywood films, men are told that salvation lies in the arms of a woman. Yet history tells a darker tale. Goethe, Germany's literary giant, once fell into obsessive love with Charlotte Buff, who was already promised to another. His anguish inspired The Sorrows of Young Werther, a novel so powerful it triggered waves of suicides across Europe. Goethe later confessed that love is an ideal thing, marriage a real thing. A confusion of the real with the ideal never goes unpunished. The pattern remains unchanged. Men mortgage their futures for fleeting illusions, mistaking the promise of intimacy for deliverance. Second lie: your worth is measured by your utility. Society drills into men that they matter only when they provide, when they are paychecks, protectors, and problem solvers. Schopenhauer recognized this when he described men as tools, kept when useful, discarded when dulled. To illustrate, researchers recently created 2 dating profiles for the same man. One showed an ordinary individual still figuring out life. The other portrayed a wealthy executive with property and status. The first account barely received attention. The second exploded with matches within hours. The evidence is clear, despite claims of wanting vulnerability or authenticity. Behavior reveals a stark truth. Men are valued for what they can offer, not who they are. When utility fades, affection evaporates. The third lie: you are the problem. The modern world pushes therapy culture, self-help mantras, and pharmaceutical solutions with relentless persistence. The message is simple: heal yourself because you are broken. But Schopenhauer warned that telling a man he is defective becomes the foundation for endless exploitation. In 1980, only 1 in 200 men used antidepressants. Today, it is 1 in 5. Has male happiness improved? Or has a new industry discovered that wounded men make profitable permanent patients? To define a man as broken is to chain him to an infinite cycle of repair, one he is told will never end. And all of this converges on a single reality: The ultimate prison is not women, nor the courts, nor the screens in our hands. The ultimate prison is the internalized belief that slavery is natural and that resistance is futile. The illusion is so powerful that many men never see beyond it. They do not reach what Schopenhauer called the commentary on life, the stage when experience reveals how profoundly we misunderstood our first decades. Most never arrive because despair silences them before wisdom matures. But for those who endure, a darker but more liberating path begins to appear. The denial not of life itself, but of illusions. The rejection of false hope becomes the foundation for freedom. And this is where the escape begins. Schopenhauer's solution was not despair, but clarity. He argued that true freedom begins when a man strips away illusions, when he refuses to be governed by promises that were never meant to be kept. He called it the denial of the will. Not the ending of life, but the rejection of false hope, to see through the mirage of love, of validation, of compulsory usefulness, is to reclaim your power. And in reclaiming it, you become ungovernable. The first step is simple but radical. Walk away from the cages built for you. Delete the dating apps that reduce desire to transactions. Refuse marriages that have become legalized slavery. When the world mocks you as toxic, laugh at the label. Schopenhauer reminded us that the free man is he who does not fear being alone. Solitude becomes not punishment, but sanctuary. The second step is transformation. Do not merely endure your suffering, weaponize it. History is filled with men who turned agony into greatness. Beethoven composed symphonies after silence fell upon his ears. Nietzsche, racked by migraines and isolation, wrote works that continue to unsettle the modern world. Van Gogh died unknown, his canvases unsold, yet revolutionized art after his death. Pain is not your weakness. It is the raw material from which power is forged. Every betrayal, every humiliation, every loss can either consume you or become fuel for creation. The system hopes you will choose destruction. Your rebellion is to choose endurance, and from endurance, mastery. The third step is patience, the long game that society no longer teaches. Modern culture celebrates female youth and dismisses male potential. Yet time humbles one and elevates the other. A woman's peak leverage lies in her 20s, but a man's strength often emerges between 35 and 55. Schopenhauer knew that time, the great leveler, diminishes women but crowns men, if they survive. Consider Hiroto, a Japanese salaryman cast aside at 40. Rather than collapse, he devoted 5 years to mastering artificial intelligence. At 50, he was recruited by a Silicon Valley firm, tripling his income while his ex-wife, who left him for not being ambitious enough, worked retail. His secret was simple. I stopped living on their clock. By withdrawing from society's timetable, he found the space to construct his own. And here lies the deepest truth Schopenhauer left us. The greatest danger is not women, nor courts, nor culture. It is men's refusal to think. Most men would rather die than think, he observed, and many do. To awaken, to think for yourself, to refuse the comfort of illusion, is to place yourself outside the reach of the machine. That is why you are still here, listening, while so many have turned away. If you endured to this point, it means you are not like the others. You have chosen to see, to resist, to step into knowledge others find unbearable. That alone is hope. If this resonated, if you felt that unmistakable shift in your chest, then declare it openly. Type the word will in the comments, not for me, but for yourself, as a mark of defiance against the chains designed to hold you. And if you are ready to take this further, to turn philosophy into weapon, suffering into strength, and knowledge into power, then do not stop here. Watch the next video. Because what comes next is not mere information, it is initiation. And initiation is how you begin to live free.